The hardest part about losing a military dog is realizing he spent his whole life protecting you, while hiding his own pain. Snow drifted slowly across the empty Colorado highway, while Caleb Mercer drove through the darkness with one trembling hand gripping the steering wheel and the other stretched toward the back seat where Rex lay curled beneath an old army blanket. The old German shepherd barely moved anymore. Every breath sounded shallow now. Heavy, tired. Outside, pine trees bent beneath freezing mountain wind, while headlights carved pale tunnels through the storm ahead of them. The heater hummed softly inside the truck, mixing with the faint sound of country radio somewhere beneath the silence. But Caleb barely heard any of it. His eyes kept drifting toward the rearview mirror every few seconds just to make sure Rex was still breathing. Still alive. Still there. "Hang on, buddy," Caleb whispered quietly. Rex's ears twitched weakly at the sound of his voice. That tiny movement nearly shattered him, because even now, after everything, the dog still listened for him first. Still searched for him. Snow thickened against the windshield while the storm warning repeated softly through the radio speakers. Roads may close overnight. Dangerous visibility. Emergency travel only. Caleb tightened his jaw and kept driving. Blackstone Veterinary Center sat another 20 miles ahead through the mountains, glowing somewhere inside the storm like the final stop at the end of a long war neither of them truly survived. Caleb swallowed hard while memories kept slipping into his mind without permission. Afghanistan. Endless heat rolling across shattered roads. Helicopters shaking the sky before dawn patrols. Rex sprinting through desert dust with alert ears and sharp eyes, while younger Marines laughed nervously behind them. Back then the shepherd looked unstoppable. Fast, fearless, alive in a way most men were not anymore. Caleb still remembered the first time Rex saved his life. Sanjin District, mid-July, 112 degrees beneath a white sky that never seemed to end. Their convoy had stopped beside a narrow dirt road lined with broken walls when Rex suddenly froze, completely still. Then the dog barked once, loud enough to cut through engine noise and radio chatter instantly. Caleb shouted for everyone to move back, seconds before buried explosives erupted beneath the road ahead. Sand swallowed the sky. Heat slammed through the convoy. Metal screamed somewhere inside the smoke. When Caleb finally opened his eyes again, Rex was lying across his chest protectively while debris rained around them. The dog saved 3 Marines that day. Maybe more. Caleb never forgot the weight of him pressed against his body while chaos burned around them. Outside, snow swirled harder now while the clinic sign finally appeared faintly ahead through the storm. Warm yellow light glowed across the parking lot beneath old lamps dusted white with snow. Caleb shut off the truck engine, but did not move right away. Silence filled the cab except for Rex's weak breathing behind him. Caleb lowered his forehead against the steering wheel for several long seconds. "I am not ready," he whispered shakily into the darkness. Then suddenly Rex pushed himself upward in the back seat. Weakly, painfully, his old body trembled with effort as he slowly crawled forward until his muzzle rested gently against Caleb's shoulder from behind. Caleb froze instantly. Warm breath touched his neck. Familiar, trusting, alive. Tears burned behind his eyes while he reached back and held the old shepherd's face carefully between both hands. "Easy," he whispered softly. "Easy, buddy." Rex stared directly at him beneath the dim dashboard lights. No fear, no confusion, just trust so complete it almost hurt to witness. Caleb finally opened the truck door and freezing wind rushed into the cab immediately, carrying snowflakes that melted softly against Rex's fur, while the old German shepherd rested quietly in his arms. The parking lot lights outside Blackstone Veterinary Center glowed pale gold beneath the storm, reflecting across the ice-covered pavement, while snow drifted sideways through the mountain air. Caleb held Rex carefully against his chest during the walk toward the entrance, one arm supporting the dog's weakened body while the other shielded his face from the wind. Rex did not struggle. He only rested his head against Caleb's shoulder exactly the same way he used to after long patrols overseas whenever helicopters shook the desert sky before sunrise. The memory hit Caleb so suddenly it nearly stopped him at the clinic door. Afghanistan always returned in fragments now. Heat, dust, radio static, young Marines pretending not to be afraid, and Rex beside him through all of it like something sent to keep him alive long enough to make it home. Warmth wrapped around them the moment the clinic doors closed behind them. Soft piano music drifted quietly through hidden speakers while the smell of coffee and lavender floated gently through the waiting room. A small Christmas wreath hung near the front desk, even though November had barely ended. Caleb noticed tiny details like that lately, maybe because grief made ordinary things feel sharper somehow. Dr. Hannah Reeves looked up from behind the counter and immediately froze when she saw Rex. Sadness crossed her face before she even spoke. "Hey there, old soldier," she whispered softly while walking around the desk. Rex lifted his eyes toward her, but barely moved otherwise. Hannah knelt beside him carefully, one hand resting gently along the shepherd's neck while she listened to his breathing. Her expression changed slightly. Concern. Confusion. Something deeper than simple illness. "He has gotten worse since last week," she said quietly. Caleb nodded once. "He barely sleeps now." Hannah looked up at him. And the pacing? Caleb stared down at Rex. Every night between 2 and 4 in the morning. His voice sounded exhausted. He keeps walking through the hallway like he hears something. Snow tapped softly against the clinic windows while silence settled between them for several seconds. Hannah finally stood slowly. "Come with me." Room 3 glowed warm beneath yellow lamps instead of harsh medical lighting. Thick blankets covered the examination table, while battery candles flickered softly near the walls. Caleb placed Rex down carefully before sitting beside him on the floor. The old shepherd immediately lowered his head into Caleb's lap. Habit, trust, home. Hannah reviewed the chart. Quietly near the counter, while Caleb continued stroking Rex's fur. "He used to love thunderstorms," Caleb whispered suddenly. Hannah looked toward him. Back in California, he would sit beside the porch during rainstorms and watch the ocean for hours. Caleb smiled faintly through the exhaustion. Now every storm terrifies him. Hannah glanced toward the old scar near Rex's neck hidden beneath thick fur. Sometimes trauma changes them later in life. Caleb nodded slowly, but deep down something about all of this felt wrong in a way he could not explain. Rex had survived explosions, gunfire, combat patrouille. Yet lately electrical sounds made him shake uncontrollably. Even the humming fluorescent lights above them seemed to bother him now. Caleb rested his forehead gently against Rex's head while snow continued falling harder outside the clinic windows. "I should have protected you better," he whispered softly. Then suddenly Rex lifted his head and stared toward the back corner of the room, with sharp focus returning instantly to his tired eyes. Rex's body stiffened instantly while a low growl rolled deep through his chest, quiet at first, but heavy enough to change the air inside the room. Caleb lifted his head immediately and followed the shepherd's stare toward the back corner near the medication cabinet where a young veterinary technician stood organizing surgical trays beneath the dim yellow light. The man froze when he noticed Rex watching him. Not nervous in the ordinary way people became around large dogs. Different, sharper, like someone suddenly realizing they had been recognized. Snow continued drifting softly against the clinic windows while the soft piano music from the hallway somehow made the silence inside the room feel even heavier. Hannah narrowed her eyes slightly. "That is unusual," she whispered quietly. Rex slowly pushed himself upright despite the visible tremor running through his legs. Caleb immediately reached toward him. "Easy, buddy." But the old German shepherd ignored the command completely. His eyes remained locked on the technician while the growl deepened another level. Focused, controlled. The same warning growl Caleb heard dozens of times overseas before danger revealed itself. The technician forced an awkward smile while stepping backward from the cabinet. "I think he just does not like me," he said quietly. Caleb stared at him without answering. Marines learned long ago how to read fear in people, especially the kind hidden behind forced calm. Rex barked suddenly, loud enough to make Hannah flinch beside the counter. Metal trays rattled softly. Then the heart monitor near the examination table spiked sharply into rapid rhythm. Beep, beep, beep. Hannah stepped toward the machine, but something else caught her attention first. Beneath the fur near Rex's neck, hidden just below the collar line, a faint red flicker pulsed once beneath the skin. Tiny. Artificial. Wrong. Hannah froze completely. Caleb, his eyes moved instantly toward her. What? The glow vanished immediately, but all three of them saw it. Even the technician. Snow swirled harder outside, while silence tightened painfully through the room. Hannah carefully moved closer and parted the thick fur near the old scar along Rex's neck. Another pulse flickered beneath the skin. Faint red light glowing deep below the surface. Caleb felt cold move slowly through his chest. What the hell is that? The technician lowered his eyes immediately. Rex barked again, sharper this time. Warning. Caleb remembered that exact bark from Afghanistan near a collapsed market road outside Sanjin. Rex gave the same sound seconds before engineers uncovered explosives buried beneath loose dirt near the convoy route. Not fear. Never fear. Alert. Hannah slowly turned toward the technician. Who are you? The man hesitated too long before answering. Nathan Collins. Caleb stood carefully while Rex immediately positioned himself between them despite trembling exhaustion weakening his legs. Protective. Always protective. You know something, Caleb said quietly. Nathan shook his head too fast. No, Caleb took one slow step closer. Dogs do not react like this for no reason. Nathan swallowed hard while snow tapped steadily against the windows behind him. Then suddenly Rex whimpered and nearly collapsed sideways. Caleb caught him immediately before he hit the floor. The monitor spiked faster again, while the faint red pulse beneath the shepherd's neck returned stronger than before. Hannah stared at it in disbelief. That is not possible, she whispered softly. Caleb looked up sharply. What is happening to him? Hannah met his eyes carefully, concern deepening across her face, while Rex trembled weakly against Caleb's arms. I think something is inside your dog. Caleb stared at Hannah for several long seconds without fully understanding the words that had just left her mouth, while Rex trembled weakly against his arms beneath the warm yellow lights of room 3. Snow continued drifting against the clinic windows in soft white streaks, while the old German shepherd pressed himself tightly against Caleb's chest like he was trying to stay grounded through the pain moving inside him. Hannah slowly reached for the stethoscope around her neck again, but her attention kept drifting back toward the faint red pulse glowing beneath Rex's fur. Every few seconds the light flickered softly under the skin near the old scar hidden along his neck. Mechanical. Rhythmic. Wrong. Caleb swallowed hard. What do you mean something is inside him? Hannah hesitated carefully before answering. I do not know yet. Her voice lowered slightly. But that is not natural. Nathan stood frozen near the back counter while Rex kept his eyes locked directly on him. The shepherd's growl had faded now into something quieter. Lower. More dangerous somehow. Caleb noticed the technician refusing to meet the dog's eyes. Sweat glistened faintly along the side of his face despite the cold air moving through the clinic vents. Marines learned to notice details like that. Tiny things. Breathing patterns. Hand movement. Fear hidden beneath calm voices. Caleb slowly stood while supporting Rex carefully against him. You're going to explain what you know. Nathan shook his head immediately. I cannot. Caleb took one slow step closer. You can. Silence settled heavily through the room, while wind rattled softly outside the building. Hannah glanced toward the clock near the wall. Almost midnight now. Snowstorm warnings continued echoing faintly from somewhere deeper. In the clinic hallways. Then suddenly the lights flickered once overhead. Rex instantly stiffened again. The old shepherd turned sharply toward the ceiling, while another faint whimper escaped his throat. Caleb felt the dog trembling harder now beneath his hands. Easy, buddy. Hannah looked carefully toward the scar near Rex's neck again. I need imaging equipment downstairs. Caleb frowned. Downstairs. There's a diagnostic scanner in the lower level. Hannah grabbed a folded blanket from the counter. If something metallic is inside him, I need to see it immediately. Nathan lowered his eyes toward the floor. Caleb caught it instantly. The fear, the guilt, the recognition. You already know what she's going to find, do not you? Nathan stayed silent. Rex barked sharply, loud enough to echo through the room. Caleb remembered that bark from overseas, too. The exact same sound Rex made one night before insurgents attacked a temporary checkpoint outside Lashkar-Gah. The dog always sensed danger first. Always. Hannah carefully wrapped the blanket around Rex before helping Caleb lift him gently into his arms again. The shepherd looked exhausted now, but his eyes never left Nathan for even a second. Protective until the very end. As they stepped into the hallway, the clinic suddenly felt strangely empty. Quiet in the wrong way. Soft piano music still drifted through the speakers, but now it sounded distant beneath the storm surrounding the building outside. Snow covered the parking lot completely beyond the glass entrance doors, while darkness pressed heavily against the windows. Caleb followed Hannah toward the elevator near the back corridor, while Nathan walked several steps behind them in silence. The old elevator groaned softly as the doors opened. Cold fluorescent light spilled across the metal walls inside. Caleb stepped in first, holding Rex carefully against his chest, while Hannah pressed the lower level button beside the panel. The doors slowly closed. Then, just before the elevator fully sealed shut, Rex suddenly growled again. Low, focused, watching something beyond the hallway behind them that nobody else could see. The elevator groaned softly as it descended beneath the clinic, while dim fluorescent lights flickered against the brushed metal walls around them. Caleb stood motionless in the center, holding Rex carefully against his chest, one hand resting protectively along the old shepherd's neck, while the other supported his weakening body beneath the blanket. Every few seconds, Rex released a faint breath against Caleb's shoulder. Warm, fragile, alive. Hannah stood beside the control panel, watching the floor numbers slowly change, while Nathan remained near the back corner with his eyes lowered toward the ground. Nobody spoke. Only the quiet mechanical hum of the elevator and the distant sound of the storm above them filled the silence. Then suddenly Rex growled again, low and steady, his ears angled sharply toward the ceiling like he could still hear something moving somewhere above them. Caleb noticed the dog trembling harder now. Easy, buddy, he whispered softly while brushing his fingers gently through the fur behind Rex's ears. The elevator doors finally opened into the lower-level diagnostic wing. Cold air drifted through the hallway, immediately carrying the faint smell of ozone, cleaning chemicals, and old electrical wiring. Unlike the warm upstairs rooms, this part of the clinic felt clinical. Empty, quiet in the wrong way. Motion-activated lights flickered on one section at a time as they walked deeper into the corridor, while snowstorm winds rumbled faintly through pipes somewhere overhead. Hannah led them toward the imaging room at the end of the hall, while Caleb's boots echoed softly across the polished floor. Rex kept staring behind them the entire walk, watching, listening, alert despite exhaustion. Hannah pushed open the scanner room doors, and pale blue monitor light spilled across the walls inside. The large diagnostic machine sat in the center beneath overhead lamps, while several dark computer screens glowed quietly nearby. Caleb carefully lowered Rex onto the padded scanner table, while the old shepherd whimpered faintly from movement. Hannah adjusted the blanket gently beneath him. I know, she whispered softly toward the dog. We are going to figure this out. Nathan remained near, the doorway looking pale beneath the fluorescent light. Caleb noticed his hands shaking slightly now. You keep looking at that scar, Caleb said quietly without turning around. Nathan swallowed hard. Because I have seen it before. Silence filled the room instantly. Hannah slowly looked toward him. What does that mean? Nathan rubbed one trembling hand across his forehead before answering. 7 years ago, there was a military program involving specialized canine units. Caleb felt his stomach tighten immediately. What kind of program? Nathan hesitated. Rex suddenly barked sharply from the scanner table, loud enough to echo through the room. Caleb remembered that exact bark too. Same tone, same urgency. The bark Rex gave one night overseas before a hidden weapons cache was discovered beneath a collapsed building outside Kandahar. Warning. Always warning. Hannah powered on the scanner while soft electronic humming filled the room. Layer by layer, images of Rex's spine slowly appeared across the monitor screen beside them. Then Hannah froze completely. Caleb stepped closer toward the display and felt the blood drain slowly from his face. Embedded beside Rex's upper spinal column sat a thin metallic object, no larger than a finger, joint wrapped deep inside scar tissue near the old injury along his neck. Tiny wire-like threads extended outward through surrounding nerves while a faint red pulse blinked softly from the center of the device. Mechanical. Alive. Hannah stared in disbelief. Oh my God. Caleb looked toward Nathan slowly. What did you people put inside my dog? Nathan closed his eyes briefly while snowstorm winds groaned softly through the walls above them. Then finally, he whispered the words Caleb would never forget for the rest of his life. That implant was never supposed to stay active this long. Caleb stared at the monitor screen while the faint red pulse inside Rex's neck continued blinking softly beneath layers of scar tissue like some buried secret refusing to die. The scanner room suddenly felt colder than before. Quieter too. Snowstorm wind groaned faintly through the walls overhead while pale fluorescent light reflected across the polished floor beneath their feet. Hannah slowly stepped closer toward the monitor, studying the metallic object embedded beside Rex's spine with growing disbelief. This is impossible, she whispered softly. No veterinary implant looks like this. Nathan lowered his eyes toward the floor. Because it was never veterinary. Caleb turned toward him immediately. Anger moved through his chest, now beneath the fear and exhaustion. Start talking. Nathan swallowed hard while Rex watched him carefully from the scanner table. Even weak, the old German shepherd never looked away from him for more than a second. Protective instincts still alive beneath all the pain. The project started around 8 years ago, Nathan said quietly. Experimental military enhancement trials for highly specialized canine units. Caleb frowned. Enhancement? Nathan nodded weakly. Threat recognition. Environmental sensitivity. Faster neurological response to danger. Hannah stared at him in disbelief. You experimented on military dogs? Nathan rubbed trembling hands together slowly. Only a handful were selected. Dogs with unusual operational scores. Caleb looked back toward Rex lying beneath the scanner light. Suddenly pieces of the past began fitting together in ways that made his stomach turn cold. The strange reactions during storms. The pacing. The electrical sensitivity. The way Rex always sensed danger before anyone else. Caleb remembered another patrol now. Southern Afghanistan. Midnight. Their squad moved carefully through abandoned farming roads while moonlight stretched pale across broken stone walls. Everything looked calm, quiet. Then Rex suddenly stopped walking and stared toward empty darkness ahead. No barking, no growling, just frozen focus. Caleb trusted him immediately. Minutes later, engineers discovered a pressure-triggered explosive hidden beneath loose gravel directly along the route they almost walked through. Back then, everybody called Rex extraordinary, gifted, special. Caleb suddenly wondered if the dog had simply been suffering for years without anybody understanding why. You put this inside him before deployment? Caleb asked quietly. Nathan nodded once. The implant was designed to amplify instinctive pattern recognition. Hannah crossed her arms tightly. And what happens when it fails? Nathan looked toward Rex. Guilt filled his face now. Neurological deterioration. Silence settled heavily across the scanner room. Caleb stared at the old shepherd while memories flooded through him faster now. Rex shaking during fireworks near the beach house in Oceanside. Rex pacing endlessly through hallways after thunderstorms. Rex staring at electrical transformers near parking lots while low growls vibrated through his chest. The dog had been trying to communicate pain all along. Caleb just never understood the language. Rex slowly lifted his tired head toward Caleb, then rested his muzzle weakly against his hand. Trust. Even now, Caleb closed his eyes briefly while emotion tightened painfully in his chest. You carried this alone for years, he whispered softly. Hannah carefully zoomed closer on the scan image. The red pulse flickered again beneath the metallic device. Stronger this time. The implant is still active, she said quietly. Nathan's face drained pale immediately. That should not be possible. Then suddenly, every light inside the scanner room flickered once. Hard enough to make the monitors blink. Rex growled instantly. Low. Focused. Warning. Caleb opened his eyes sharply while snowstorm wind roared somewhere above them. Then the security monitor near the wall crackled softly to life. A black SUV slowly rolled into the clinic parking lot through the falling snow outside. The black SUV remained motionless beneath the parking lot lights while heavy snow drifted across the windshield in slow white waves. Caleb stared at the security monitor mounted beside the scanner room wall and immediately felt something inside his chest tighten. The vehicle looked government-issued. Clean. Dark. Anonymous in the exact way military transport often looked overseas before bad news arrived. Rex growled low from the scanner table, while the faint red pulse beneath his neck flickered stronger again beneath the fur. Hannah glanced nervously toward the hallway outside the room. Does anyone else know this clinic is open tonight? Nathan shook his head slowly, but fear had completely taken over his face now. If they track the implant signal, they know exactly where we are. Caleb turned sharply toward him. Who are they? Nathan hesitated before answering. The people who shut the program down. Snowstorm wind rattled softly through the underground pipes above them, while silence settled heavily across the scanner room once again. Caleb looked back toward Rex lying beneath the pale monitor lights. The old shepherd looked exhausted now. Every breath seemed harder than the last, but his eyes never stopped moving toward the hallway entrance every few seconds like he sensed danger approaching long before any human could. Caleb rested one hand gently along Rex's side, while memories rose inside him again without warning. Oceanside. Late summer. Warm ocean wind moving through the porch screens while Rex slept beside the sliding glass door after evening walks along the beach. Back then, Caleb thought retirement meant peace. Quiet mornings. Coffee by the water. Distance from war. But even during those calm days, the shepherd sometimes woke suddenly during thunderstorms and paced through the house for hours staring toward electrical outlets or humming appliances with unease Caleb never fully understood. The signs were always there. Caleb just did not know how to read them yet. Hannah slowly stepped closer toward the monitor screen again. If this implant is still active, it could overstimulate his nervous system permanently. Nathan nodded weakly. The technology amplified instinctive threat response through neural signal reinforcement. Caleb frowned. Speak English. Nathan swallowed hard. It made military dogs hyper-aware of environmental danger. Hannah looked horrified. For years. Nathan lowered his eyes. Longer than anyone expected. Rex suddenly whimpered softly beneath Caleb's hand. The sound barely lasted a second, but it carried enough exhaustion to cut straight through him. Caleb leaned closer immediately. I know, buddy. The shepherd slowly rested his muzzle against Caleb's wrist while snow continued falling heavily outside the clinic above them. Then suddenly the overhead lights flickered again. Harder this time. Every monitor blinked once before stabilizing. Rex growled immediately. Focused. Warning. Caleb looked toward the hallway entrance just as faint footsteps echoed somewhere beyond the lower corridor outside. Slow. Calm. Deliberate. Hannah stiffened beside the scanner controls. Nathan's face drained pale. They're here. Caleb stood slowly while old instincts returned almost automatically beneath the exhaustion. Marine instincts never truly disappeared. Even years later. Even buried beneath grief. He looked toward Hannah carefully. Can you remove it? Hannah hesitated only a second before answering. Maybe. Caleb glanced toward Rex again. The old German shepherd stared back at him, with tired amber eyes still filled with complete trust despite everything happening around them. Caleb felt his throat tighten painfully. The dog had walked beside him through explosions, nightmares, panic attacks, and loneliness so deep it nearly swallowed him whole after the war ended. And somehow, even now, Rex still looked at him like everything would be okay as long as Caleb stayed close. Another set of footsteps echoed through the hallway outside. Closer now. Then a calm male voice drifted faintly through the underground corridor beyond the scanner room door. "Nathan," the voice called softly. "Open the door." The voice outside the scanner room sounded calm enough to make the silence afterward feel even colder. Snowstorm wind groaned faintly through the underground pipes while the fluorescent lights above them flickered one soft pulse at a time. Nathan stared toward the closed door with fear written openly across his face now. "That is Director Wallace," he whispered quietly. Hannah frowned. "Director of what?" Nathan swallowed hard before answering. "The military program." Caleb felt Rex press weakly against his leg beneath the scanner table while the old shepherd released another low growl toward the hallway outside. Even exhausted, the dog still positioned himself between Caleb and danger out of pure instinct. The same instinct that carried them through years of war together. Caleb slowly stepped closer toward the scanner room entrance while keeping one hand near Rex's neck. "You said the program was shut down." Nathan nodded weakly. "Officially." The voice outside returned again. Softer this time. "Controlled." "Nathan, we know the implant is active. Open the door." Hannah looked sharply toward Nathan. "How would they know that?" Nathan glanced toward the scanner monitor where the faint red pulse still blinked beneath Rex's spine. "The implant transmits neurological activity during heightened stimulation." Caleb stared at him in disbelief. "You track these dogs?" Nathan lowered his eyes. "Not anymore." Caleb's jaw tightened immediately. "Then why are they here?" Silence answered for several seconds while snow tapped steadily somewhere above them. Then Nathan finally whispered the truth. "Because Rex should not still be alive." The words settled heavily through the room. Caleb looked down toward the old German shepherd resting against his side. Suddenly, every strange moment from the past few years felt different now. The pacing, the storms, the unexplained fear near electrical equipment, even the seizures. Rex had been carrying a damaged military device inside his body while still protecting the people around him every single day. Caleb remembered another night back in Oceanside after retirement. A 4th of July celebration near the beach. Fireworks exploding over the ocean while crowds laughed beneath the summer sky. Rex suddenly panicked beside the boardwalk and dragged Caleb away from the pier seconds before a damaged transformer nearby exploded in sparks during the storm. At the time, Caleb thought the dog simply feared loud noise. Now he understood Rex sensed the electrical surge before anyone else did. The shepherd had been trying to survive something nobody even knew existed. Hannah stepped closer toward the monitor again. If the implant is still transmitting signals, it could overload his nervous system permanently. Caleb looked toward her carefully. "Can you remove it?" Hannah hesitated. "Maybe." Nathan shook his head immediately. "The device is integrated into the spinal nerve cluster." Caleb frowned. "Meaning?" Nathan looked sick now. "Removing it could kill him." Rex slowly lifted his tired eyes toward Caleb while pale scanner light reflected softly across his face. "Trust. Pure and absolute." Caleb knelt beside him immediately and rested his forehead gently against the old shepherd's head. "You stayed beside me through every nightmare I survived," he whispered softly. "I am not leaving you now." Another knock echoed against the scanner room door outside. Calm, patient. Then Director Wallace spoke again through the silence. "This does not need to become difficult." Caleb stood slowly while marine instincts settled back into his posture without effort. Years might pass after war, but some parts of a soldier never truly disappear. Hannah looked toward him carefully. "If we do this surgery, we need time." Caleb glanced toward the sealed doorway, while snowstorm wind howled faintly somewhere above the clinic. Then he looked back toward Rex one more time. The old German shepherd's tail moved weakly against the blanket despite everything, still trusting him completely. Caleb nodded once toward Hannah. "Save my dog." Hannah moved quickly the moment Caleb gave the order, while snowstorm wind shook the clinic somewhere above them like distant thunder rolling through the mountains. The scanner room suddenly felt smaller now, tighter, every second heavy with pressure. Hannah began preparing the lower surgical suite beside the imaging room, while Nathan searched through old encrypted files on the nearby computer terminal with trembling hands. Caleb never moved far from Rex. The old German shepherd lay quietly beneath the blanket now, exhausted but calm, his tired amber eyes following Caleb every time he crossed the room. Trust still lived there, somehow stronger than fear. Another knock echoed softly against the scanner room door outside. Director Wallace remained patient, calm, like a man completely certain time would eventually hand him what he wanted. "Nathan," his voice drifted faintly through the hallway again. "You are making this harder than necessary." Nathan stared toward the sealed doorway, while guilt hollowed out his face. "He thinks the implant still belongs to the program," he whispered quietly. Caleb looked down toward Rex and gently brushed his fingers through the gray fur around the shepherd's muzzle. "He belongs to nobody." Hannah wheeled Rex carefully into the surgical room while pale overhead lights reflected softly across stainless steel counters and quiet medical equipment. The room smelled faintly of antiseptic and warm electrical wiring. Caleb stayed beside Rex while Hannah connected monitoring leads one at a time. Beep, beep, beep. The steady rhythm filled the silence softly. Familiar somehow. Human. Caleb rested one hand gently against Rex's chest while memories returned again in slow fragments. Early mornings in Oceanside after retirement. Rex waiting beside the front door every sunrise because he knew Caleb could not sleep after nightmares. Long Beach walks where strangers smiled at the old shepherd without realizing how many lives he once protected overseas. Nights where Caleb sat alone on the porch listening to ocean waves while Rex rested quietly beside him through every panic attack without needing a single word. Healing never came through therapy alone. Sometimes it arrived through loyalty, through silence, through a dog refusing to leave somebody broken behind. Hannah inhaled slowly while studying the latest scan image beside the operating table. "The implant is wrapped around spinal nerves," she whispered carefully. "Removing it could trigger catastrophic neurological damage." Caleb nodded once. "But leaving it inside kills him anyway." Hannah met his eyes quietly. "Yes." Silence settled heavily across the room after that. Caleb leaned closer toward Rex until their foreheads touched gently together beneath the surgical light. "You carried me through hell," he whispered softly. "Now let me carry you." Rex's tail moved faintly beneath the blanket. Small, weak, but there. Then suddenly every light in the room flickered violently once before stabilizing again. The monitor beside Rex spiked sharply. Beep, beep, beep. Faster now. The red pulse beneath the shepherd's neck glowed brighter beneath the skin than ever before. Nathan looked toward the monitor in horror. The implant is reacting to stress stimulation. Another knock echoed outside the hallway door. Closer this time. Then Director Wallace spoke. Again through the silence. "You do not understand what that dog was designed to become." Caleb slowly stood upright beside the operating table, while old marine instincts settled visibly into his posture once more. Calm, steady, protective. He looked toward the closed surgical room door for several long seconds before turning back toward Rex again. The old German shepherd stared up at him beneath the pale lights with complete trust despite the fear and pain surrounding them. Caleb rested one hand gently against the shepherd's face while snowstorm wind howled softly above the clinic. "He was never your experiment," Caleb whispered quietly. "He was my partner." Then Hannah reached for the surgical instruments beside the table while the monitor continued pulsing steadily through the silence.